Cyberpunk used to be fiction, neon-drenched worlds, mega-corporations, cyber-enhanced rebels fighting for survival. But if you look around today, corporate dominance, mass surveillance, artificial intelligence, and data being used for decision-making and mass manipulation. Doesn't it feel like we're already living in that dystopian future? So how did Cyberpunk go from speculative fiction to a mirror of our reality? And is there any way for the subgenre to stay relevant when the future it imagined is already here?
As you know, here in the channel, we like to dissect some fantasy and sci-fi subgenres. Today is Cyberpunk's turn in the spotlight. So in this video, we're going to explore Cyberpunk's origins, how it became mainstream, and why so much of it feels eerily close to reality today. Most importantly, we're going to ask what's next for Cyberpunk in a world that already feels like the dystopia it warned us about. So let's get to it.
First things first, a definition. Cyberpunk is a subgenre of science fiction that explores dystopian futures where advanced technology coexists with societal decay. Cyberpunk is about the intersection of high-tech and low-life, a world dominated by megacorporations, invasive surveillance, and cybernetic enhancements. It's gritty, neon-soaked, and filled with morally ambiguous characters struggling to survive in a broken world. Unlike other sci-fi genres that focus on grand space operas or hopeful futures, Cyberpunk is dark, urban, and often disturbingly close to reality. Cyberpunk world-building is distinct and instantly recognizable, filled with recurring elements that reinforce its dark, dystopian vibe. The cities are often overcrowded mega-metropolises, blending futuristic tech with crumbling infrastructure. Technology is everywhere, from cybernetic body modifications to virtual reality networks that blur the line between physical and digital space. The divide between the rich and poor is extreme, with powerful corporations living in luxury, while the underclass scrapes by in the shadows. AI, hacking, and black markets for illegal enhancements are all part of the landscape, creating a gritty, high-stakes environment where survival often depends on how well you can navigate the system or break it. The themes that define Cyberpunk have remained strikingly relevant since its inception. It's a genre deeply concerned with corporate control, where massive conglomerates wield more power than governments. Individual rebellion is a key element, with hackers, mercenaries, and cyber-enhanced outcasts fighting back against oppressive systems. The loss of humanity is another central theme. Characters often grapple with how much of their identity is left after technological augmentation. Cyberpunk emerged in the 1980s, shaped by real-world fears about technology and social decay. Authors like William Gibson, who wrote Neuromancer, and Bruce Sterling were pioneers of the genre, imagining futures where the digital age spirals out of control. The 1980s were a time of rapid technological advancement and growing corporate influence, making it the perfect breeding ground for these dystopian visions. Movies like Blade Runner and anime classics like Akira and Ghost in the Shell brought cyberpunk to life visually, solidifying its aesthetic and themes for decades to come.
In short, Cyberpunk is more than the aesthetics. The neon lights in the cybernetics. It's a reflection of real fears, born for the rapid rise of technology and corporate dominance in the late 20th century. It's a genre that thrives on questioning where the line between humanity and machine begins to blur. And even though Cyberpunk is firmly rooted in the past, its themes feel more relevant today than ever before.
In cyberpunk fiction, megacorporations rule everything. Governments are weak and power lies in the hands of a few all-seeing, all-controlling companies. Sound familiar? Today, we have tech giants like Google, Amazon, Meta, and Apple that wield immense influence over our daily lives, often more than governments themselves. They control the flow of information, shape how we interact with the world, and are deeply embedded in almost every aspect of modern society. In many ways, they're the real-life equivalent of the mega corporations in Blade Runner and Neuromancer, blurring the line between dystopian fiction and reality. Mass surveillance is another hallmark of cyberpunk, and something we live with every day. Governments and corporations track everything we do online. Our location, browsing habits, purchases, even our private conversations. This is exactly the kind of invasive surveillance depicted in Ghost in the Shell and Neuromancer. What was once a futuristic fear is now an accepted reality. We carry tracking devices in our pocket, willingly hand over personal data for convenience, and rarely stop to think about who's watching or what they're doing with that information. The technological advances that once seemed far-fetched in cyberpunk stories are quickly becoming part of our world. AI is everywhere, managing what we see online and making decisions once reserved for humans. Meanwhile, cybernetic enhancements like advanced prosthetics and brain-computer interfaces are no longer science fiction.
When Cyberpunk first came to be, it was written as a warning, a glimpse into the future shaped by unchecked technological power and corporate control. But today, so much of it feels like reality. I don't want to get into too many political details, but you've seen the news. The question we need to ask now is, where do we draw the line between fiction and the present? And if you are already living in a cyberpunk setting, how do you stop this setting from becoming the worst version of that future?
Let's be honest, one of the reasons people love cyberpunk is the aesthetic. The neon lights, gritty cityscapes, cybernetic implants, and rain-soaked streets are undeniably cool. But the problem is that, in a lot of modern media, the aesthetic has started to overshadow the heart of what cyberpunk is supposed to be about. Cyberpunk was born as a critique of unchecked technological power, corporate dominance, and social inequality. Now, a lot of stories just use the neon and tech without engaging with the deeper themes. The result? It often feels more like style over substance, missing what made the genre resonate in the first place. A big part of this problem is that modern cyberpunks often blurs the line between critique and glorification. Take Cyberpunk 2077, for example. It's an ambitious game with a rich world, but at times it feels like it's glorifying the very tech-driven dystopia it should be critiquing. Instead of focusing on rebellion against the system, it leans into the appeal of power and enhancement, selling the idea that augmentations and corporate power are exciting. Compare that to The Matrix, which uses its cyberpunk world as a clear metaphor for control and rebellion. The difference is in how the message is framed. Are we celebrating the world's tech or questioning what it's doing to us? For cyberpunk to remain meaningful, it needs to evolve. The original stories were written as warnings about the future, but now that so much of that future is here, simply reflecting it back to us isn't enough. Some argue the genre could benefit from incorporating more hopeful or proactive elements, like solarpunk, which focuses on sustainable, cooperative futures. This doesn't mean abandoning cyberpunk's dystopian roots, but maybe it's time to explore how people fight back, adapt, and survive in these worlds. Stories like Altered Carbon play with these ideas, blending bleak realities with moments of hope and resistance, showing that cyberpunk can be both cautionary and empowering.
So we've been talking about some of the aesthetic aspects of cyberpunk, the neon lights and cybernetic body parts. And it is important for cyberpunk to engage with the themes that make it powerful in the first place: rebellion, control, and the relationship between technology and humanity. If we want cyberpunk to stay relevant, and it has the potential to stay relevant because it's so present, it needs to push beyond just aesthetics, push beyond just reflecting our current society, and start exploring what comes next. Because if the future of cyberpunk is already here, can cyberpunk predict what's the next step in the evolution of what's happening?
To really understand what makes cyberpunk powerful, it helps to look at some of the standout examples in visual media. These stories shaped how we think about the genre and pushed its themes to new heights. These works show just how versatile and thought-provoking cyberpunk can be. No discussion of cyberpunk would be complete without Blade Runner. Ridley Scott's 1982 film is one of the most influential pieces of cyberpunk media, setting the visual standard for the genre. Neon-lit cities, perpetual rain, and sprawling urban decay. But what makes Blade Runner timeless is how it explores themes of identity, memory, and what it means to be human. The replicants, synthetic humans created to serve society, are more sympathetic than the people hunting them, forcing viewers to question where the line between human and machine really lies. Beneath its stylish exterior, Blade Runner is a deeply philosophical story about power, mortality, and the human condition. From Japan, Ghost in the Shell is another cyberpunk master, blending high-concept storytelling with stunning animation. The 1995 anime film stands out for its deep exploration of technology's impact on identity and consciousness. Major Motoko Kusanagi, a cybernetic operative, struggles with the question of whether she's still human, or just a collection of data inside an artificial body. Ghost in the Shell asks hard questions about the merging of human consciousness with technology, blurring the lines between physical reality and the digital world. It's a more introspective take on cyberpunk, rooted in Eastern philosophy and existentialism. Then there's The Matrix, which brought cyberpunk into mainstream pop culture. Combining action, philosophy, and a dystopian view of the digital age, the Wachowskis reimagined cyberpunk for a new generation. The film taps into fears of technological control and simulated reality, asking what it means to live in a world where nothing is real. But The Matrix goes beyond just being a warning. It's also a story of rebellion and empowerment. Neo's journey from a disillusioned programmer to humanity's savior mirrors the classic cyberpunk theme of breaking free from oppressive systems. Its blend of philosophy, spectacle, and timeless themes makes it a standout example in the genre.
These are just a few examples of how diverse cyberpunk can be. Blade Runner is philosophical and haunting. Ghost in the Shell is introspective and thought-provoking. And The Matrix brings action, philosophy, and rebellion into the mix. Each one tackles core themes of cyberpunk in unique ways and showcase different facets of the subgenre. Again, it's a playground for exploring technology, control, and what it means to be human.
For cyberpunk to stay relevant, it could return to its rebellious, anti-establishment roots. The genre was born as a response to fears about unchecked technological power and corporate dominance. Early stories like Neuromancer and Blade Runner challenged dystopian futures. But in recent years, cyberpunk has leaned too heavily on aesthetics and world building, without offering the social critique that once defined it. To evolve, it needs to focus less on flashy tech and more on rebellion. Stories about fighting back, exposing systems of control, and reclaiming humanity in a dehumanized world. One of the risks of cyberpunk is that it can fall into pure nihilism, depicting a world so bleak that resistance feels pointless. While these stories are powerful, they can also feel limiting. A more compelling direction is to explore resistance and adaptation, showing how people can survive, organize, and even thrive in these dystopian settings. Cyberpunk doesn't have to be hopeful, but it can be about finding sparks of light in the darkness, characters who reclaim their agency, communities that fight for their future, and moments of resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Another exciting path for the genre is to blend cyberpunk with other genres, creating more layered and complex futures. Post-cyberpunk stories, for example, often feature protagonists who work within broken systems to change them from the inside, adding a more reflective twist to the classic cyberpunk narrative. Solarpunk offers an even more radical shift, imagining sustainable, collaborative futures that contrast cyberpunk's typically bleak settings. Mixing these genres allows writers to push cyberpunk in new directions, offering fresh perspectives while staying true to its core themes of technology and power.
Ultimately, if cyberpunk wants to stay meaningful, it needs to evolve. The rebellious, anti-establishment heart of the genre needs to beat louder. It needs to tell stories that reflect and challenge our current realities and project what could be in the future. At its best, cyberpunk can blend genres, explore resistance, and even imagine some new possibilities. These possibilities for the future can also be positive, like Solarpunk. It can be more than just an aesthetic. It could be a powerful commentary on the world we live in and the world we want to avoid or create. If cyberpunk started as a warning, then maybe its future is showing us how to fight back. The dystopia may already be here, but it's up to us to decide what happens next.
Cyberpunk has always been a mirror, reflecting our fears about technology, corporate control, and what it means to be human. But now that so much of that imagined future is our present, the genre faces a crossroads. Will it continue to reflect reality, or will it evolve to show us how to resist and rebuild? Cyberpunk is at its best when it's not just a dystopian warning, but a story about survival, rebellion, and reclaiming agency in a world that's constantly changing. The future of the genre depends on writers and creators pushing it beyond aesthetics and finding new ways to explore those core themes.
So what do you think? Is Cyberpunk still relevant? Has it lost its edge? I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. What's your favorite Cyberpunk story? And where do you think the genre should go next? And again, if you want to dive deeper into world building, sci-fi, and fantasy, join our free Discord server. It's a great place to connect with like-minded people, storytellers, and fans of the genre. You can find a link to that in the channel's page, and see you next time.
Come join our Tavern discussion of fantasy storytelling and world building here at Loregeist. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Thanks for watching, and may your tales be ever epic.